Patterson, and Charlotte Area Transit System Interim, Brent Cagle. If you would, please stand and raise your right hand. You swear or affirm that the testimony you give here today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Have a seat, please. Thank you. Chief Patterson, congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
I've heard stellar things about you from Colonel Johnson. He was here to see you today, and we ran a little long. He had a funeral, one of his troopers passed, and he had to fly to Surrey County, but I just want you to know he talks very highly of you and has enjoyed the working relationship you have. So,
yes, sir.
Just kind of want to go over. I know you're still getting your feet wet over in Charlotte, leaving the fair city of Raleigh. Now that you've taken command, what are your top 2 or 3 priorities over the next year?
Yeah, so, Mr. Chair, first I want to say thank you to this board for allowing me to be here today. It is an honor to serve as the Chief of Police for the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department, a city that I absolutely love and a police department that I know and also love. In terms of my priorities, I have been very vocal about this publicly and internally to my organization. There are 3 areas that I want to focus on as the chief. The first and foremost being violent crime reduction, looking at violent crime across our city, our jurisdiction, and making sure that we are mitigated at every turn that we can. Also, to building community. We know that we can't do this work alone. We don't have enough officers to have them in every place at all times. So it's very important. It's critical to us that we have strong partnerships within our community and working very closely with them at every turn. And then lastly, and most importantly, looking inwardly towards our staff, our police officers. I'm a officer's chief. I believe in making sure that our people are well taken care of. I've demonstrated that when I was in Raleigh as the chief, and I know that we have got to fill vacancies. We have to make sure our employees have the tools they need to be successful so that we can make our city the safest that it can be. So those are the top priorities that I have outlined and that I will continue to work towards.
Well, you went right in and answered my next question. And I do want to let you know also, some of the private individuals, not public officials in your community, has already bragged on you and some of the things you've implemented. You being out in the street yourself. You're leading by example and not just giving orders. So I commend you on that, and it's getting the respect of your community already.
Thank you, sir.
We don't ever want to point fingers. What would you say you've learned from your predecessors' mistakes? What will you do a little differently? I've heard some things, but if you just elaborate a little bit.
And, Mr. Chair, I'll be first foremost to say that Chief Jennings is a friend of mine. He's a mentor. He helped me in my career move along. I think he helped me get the chief's job in Raleigh. So I think very highly of him. I respect the work that he did in Charlotte. Coming into this position, looking across the board, I have to relearn Charlotte. I have to relearn some things that's going on in our community. I think moving forward, though, the big things that I've stated, those are my goals that I want to do. But I think we really have to focus heavily on the perception of crime. I think people think that Charlotte is an unsafe city, although our numbers show otherwise. So really just making sure, for me, that we're working on that perception and we're working to mitigate crime on all terms.
Good. Talk to us about how CMPD is using crime data and technology to drive decisions. And on that, I'm asking how the analytics, real-time intelligence, tools like cameras, LPRs, how are you utilizing those?
We're utilizing all those tools, and I'm very happy to see that. Coming back to Charlotte, one of the biggest things that I saw that we have made an investment in, which our city is helping to fund, but also our private-public partnerships are working together for it, is drones. In Raleigh, we had drones. We saw they were useful when we had large protests, when we were doing surveillance and various other things. Having that technology, that's a force multiplier for us. And so being able to utilize those tools, I think, is really helpful. Additionally, we have a crime gun intelligence center that we're working very closely with the ATF. That is good. When you have shooting events, you want to be able to solve that crime as quick as possible, be able to do correlations with those casings. Having a crime gun unit that specifically focuses on that is really essential to us. We have a lot of tools in our toolbox here in Charlotte that I'm very proud of. Technology is a big thing. We're very data-driven. We have one of the best crime analysis units in the country. They've received several awards because of the way they gather data, the way they disseminate the data, making sure that we are on top of crime before it even happens, identifying those hot spots, identifying those trends. We use data repeatedly to be able to give us that information, and our team is just fantastic when it comes to that.
Effective public policy depends on patrol, detention, prosecutors, and all the courts pulling in the same direction. From your perspective, where are the biggest coordination challenges right now?
So I'm a natural collaborator. I believe in bringing in all our teams. In fact, I was started on the job day one on December 1st. On December 5th, we pulled together a multi-agency operation to really focus on our uptown because of the perception of crime and because of some upticks we had seen. And so I brought Highway Patrol. Colonel Johnson was very gracious, stood up with me to talk about that at a press conference. We had North Carolina ALE. We brought in the FBI. All these partners, our U.S. Attorney of the Western District, Russ Ferguson, was there with us, said, hey, we want to be a part of this. So it is super important to me. It's critical that we have all our partners at the table. There are some partners, though, that I feel that we have to work a little bit harder to bring to the table. I think some of our private security and that kind of thing, because they're just not used to having a relationship with the police in that way. But I am committed to making sure that we bring them in and that they are part of our team. Again, we have a limited number of police officers to do the work. We have to rely on everybody coming together. And I'm glad that this body recognizes that as well. The General Assembly has been very good to us. When I was here in Raleigh, I came before you a couple times to get some of the things that we need to help with that collaboration and to build those gaps. And so I appreciate this board for, and not just this board, but the General Assembly for working very closely on that.
And I've got just one final one. How do you consider your relationship with the Mecklenburg Sheriff's Department?
The relationship with I realize that public safety is a shared responsibility. Each one of us have our part that we have to do. We work closely with the sheriff because when we arrest somebody, they have to go to the jail. I happen to know the sheriff. He is a friend. He's somebody that I can go to. I know that if I call him, I can get what I need. The relationship, I think, is a good relationship in terms from that perspective. We know that we have some challenges just across the board when it comes to some legislation and things like that, and I know that this body is working on it. But I would characterize our relationship as a good one. We do our respective duties. I don't tell him how to run the jail. He doesn't tell me how to run a police department. We stay in our lane.
Members, any questions? Representative Quick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and welcome, Chief, and congratulations on your historic nature, being history here in Raleigh and history in Charlotte, Mecklenburg, and certainly well-deserved. These things are not given to you, but certainly you deserve both of these appointments. Just have one question for you. As it relates to mental health and substance abuse, with police officers having to sometimes serve as de facto substance abuse counselors and resolve substance abuse matters as well as mental health matters. Explain a little bit to this committee as to how what that actually looks like on the ground and how you all are able to mitigate that and what we can do to assist you in that.
Sure, and thank you, Representative Quick, for that question. So we see a growing mental health crisis across our nation, not just in our community, but across the nation. And we know that we have to have resources for those individuals. I'm proud and I'm pleased that CMPD is doing some things right in that arena. We have our CPCRT, or our Community Policing Crisis Response Team. That is where we pair an officer with a mental health clinician, and they go out and they respond to calls where somebody might be in a mental health situation or a crisis. And they do follow up. It's not just a one and done where they go and they respond to the scene, but they follow up to ensure that that person is getting the care that they need. Also, too, I'm very proud that we have CIT officers, crisis intervention trained officers, in fact, probably about 700 or so within our agency that are trained with baseline dealing with individuals who might be in crisis or have a mental health condition. I think that, and working with the county, Mecklenburg County has a fantastic CIT program. We just met last week to talk about how we expand it, how we get more officers CIT trained, and not only that, but also, too, that at a 2-year mark, that they get a refresher training as well, because it's important that they continue to learn and evolve and make sure that they understand how to help and de-escalate situations when there's mental health issues that are concerned. When I look across the board, I know NAMI has a different model on when you should be CIT trained. When I was in Raleigh, every officer was CIT trained. They got it in the academy. But at CMPD, we want to make sure that our officers have some knowledge on how to deal with individuals in the public. So they do not become CIT certified until at least about 3 or 4 years on the force, kind of thing. So bottom line for me is it is super important that our officers have training when it comes to dealing with somebody in mental health crises. I'm an advocate of that, and we'll continue to work with our county and our other partners to make sure that our officers are trained.
Follow up.
You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My final question is, as fast as Charlotte is growing and the number of people who are moving into Charlotte, you have to deal with the current realities, but also you have to be future focused. How are you, as the chief of police, being future focused as to the issues that may arise from a fast growing population in Charlotte?
Yes, so in 2 ways. One is we have to increase our police department. And the manager knew I was going to say this. We have to fill our vacancies.
You on the spot. I didn't do it.
We absolutely have to fill our vacancies. That is a top priority of mine. As our city is growing, we have to make sure that we got enough resources. We can only rely so much on technology to be those force multipliers. We have to have officers in those seats. So I'm going to be working very diligently to close our vacancy gap, expand our police department, and bring more officers to Charlotte. We need that. The second thing is we have to look to best practices. What are other cities doing? Charlotte is a part of the Major City Chiefs Association, where all the chiefs of large agencies over 100,000 come together to talk about best practices. What works? What should we make investments in? And then we learn from that from one another. A lot of the challenges we're seeing with street takeovers, with violent crime, other large cities are facing the same issues. And so if we can learn from one another and work collaboratively, I think it's a win for everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Hawkins, you are recognized for a question.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Really appreciate it, Chief. I won't ask you what place you like better, Raleigh or Charlotte. But I will ask...
Lead the fifth on that one.
Absolutely. There you go. I will ask you what you have learned from Raleigh to Charlotte. Because I think you mentioned that everyone in Raleigh was CIT trained, but you decided to not do that in Charlotte. What are some other pieces that you're going to carry from one large city to the next?
I would say that both cities are aligned in terms of the types of incidents that we see. Of course, we had the horrible mass shooting here, Hedingham, in 2022. So you have violent crime occurring everywhere, kind of thing. I think probably the biggest thing I learned from Raleigh is just seeing things through a different perspective. For instance, we had more walking beats in Raleigh to deal with our homeless population, our unsheltered population. Those officers were CIT certified so that they can talk with these individuals. They were very much in touch with them. Charlotte, of course, is much larger. Our downtown is much larger. We need to have staffing to do that. But that is something that I think that we could probably accomplish in Uptown because, one, it makes people feel safer to see that presence of officers doing those walking beats. But then also, two, we're identifying those who may need mental health services and being able to connect them with those right services.
Follow up.
You're recognized.
It seems, there is, a growing narrative about Charlotte being an unsafe city, but it feels like it's unwarranted because there has been a 21% drop in violent crime over the last year. And so you talked about interventions, you talked about wanting to get more cops on the beat. If you could answer for me, what can the General Assembly do to better support you? And secondly, do you have any impediments to filling your positions? Like, is it because of pay? Is it because of people not wanting to get into law enforcement? What do you think your gaps come from when we talk about employment on the Charlotte Mecklenburg Police Department?
Yes, sir. And Representative Hawkins, if I could start with just addressing the crime
Sure.
that you talked about. We're very pleased that we saw reductions across the board in our violent crime and in our property crime. That is something that you don't see often. And so I really want to tout the work of our officers in 2025 to reduce our crime. And even year to date, we're safer now than we were in 2025 this time. Very pleased with that. Year to date, we're down 29% in violent crime, 27% in property crime, and 27% overall. So we're going to keep working to keep that trend going down. But when you talk about the gaps and what we see as issues and what this body, what the General Assembly can help us with, I think it's the same challenges that everybody is facing across the nation. The sheriff talked about it a little bit, but I think I would ask this body to help us to be able to ensure that our officers have competitive pay, that what we offer them is the best in the nation, so that the talent wants to come to North Carolina rather than other states. Also, too, that we incentivize the work. I think that Charlotte does a fantastic job of providing incentives, but we still have vacancies. So I think we can do a little bit more. If the General Assembly, and the Colonel might get upset for me saying this, but same way the General Assembly funds take-home cars for our troopers, we'd love to see something like that in our municipalities as well, or at least some funding that can go towards that.
Very nice. Last follow-up.
I was about to say, I know you're not finished.
You know me well, sir. What is the vacancy, current vacancy rate?
We're roughly at 289 vacancies.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Representative Cunningham, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Chief Patterson, for being here. I have a couple of questions. The CIT training, it takes 40 hours for them to train. Is that part of the issue, is getting the officers off so they can train and having people in place to substitute for them?
No, ma'am, not exactly. I think what it is just getting them. We have the vacancies to do it. We have the seats to do it. The county is very good about getting those classes together when we need them. Part of the issue is just we have young officers. We have a very young police department, and we want to wait till they get to about that 2 or 3 year point where we feel that they have some road experience before we have them do the CIT training. And I think that's useful. I know in Raleigh we did it a little bit differently, but to understand how to talk to somebody, how to recognize trends or behavior is useful for CIT. So for us, it's just making sure that they get to about that 2 year mark and putting them in the classes. But we don't have any issues with the county having availability for those classes.
Okay. So currently we have 6 mental health professionals embedded with our CMPD, and it looks like it runs $500,000 to $600,000 annually for that. Is that correct?
I don't know exactly how much that is, but I certainly can get that information for you.
So I understand the program has been working very well, but with the growth, it seems like we may need to be looking at additional mental health professionals to be out with the officers. Will you get back with me on that? Because as the population grows and the social norms and behavior norms are just not present anymore in society.
Yes, ma'am. And thank you for bringing that to our attention. That is something that we have spoken about. I'm still getting on the ground, still trying to just evaluate, learn, see where the gaps are. But I agree with you that having enough mental health professionals and having these teams of officers is really beneficial to us.
Follow up, Mr. Chair. I'm on juvenile right now. So with the juvenile intervention programs, and let me go ahead and say this, when we have juveniles that have mental health issues or behavioral health issues, we normally are last in the state to get a psychiatric inpatient bed. So we've been trying to get a 70-bed facility built in Mecklenburg County so the children can remain in their home where the parents are. But we're still struggling with that. And my issue with that is that the juvenile crime hasn't increased, but according to the previous testifier, the level of the violent crime has gone up. So what are we doing in that space?
And Madam Representative, you're saying to work with our juveniles is what you're saying?
Yes.
Yes. So we have programs within CMPD where we focus on our juveniles. And the most current one that we have that we're seeing some successes with is our JADE program, our Juvenile Accountability and Diversion program. And that is where our officers are working, following up on these juveniles if they commit a crime or before they even commit a crime, trying to identify those trends and working with them to make sure that they don't go down a path of crime. The mental health aspect of it, again, I just feel that we do need more mental health resources, people who are trained to work with these young people. I think it's just we have to do a full analysis, or I do, coming in new, to determine exactly what those numbers look like. And I would like to clarify when I talked about our clinicians, we currently have 12 clinicians working with our mental health groups.
Okay, I'm going to just make a comment, Mr. Chair. Thank you so much. So I recognize you just came into the city and you were in Raleigh. And it seems like you all had an ACORN program. Was that, I thought I had heard you speak about the ACORN, which was patterned behind Cahoot's program.
Yes.
But I'm concerned that we're waiting 2 to 3 years for CIT training. Even if they're new officers, they should be well qualified to handle that population, because we are seeing more issues with people with mental health and behavioral health issues. As the population grows and the homeless continues to grow in our area, we're going to need more officers ready to intervene in those actions with engagement with those individuals. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Chief Patterson.
Yes, duly noted, Representative.
Representative Ager.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Chief Patterson, for being with us today. One of my questions got stolen, so I've only got one, and the real question, just from a sort of big picture perspective, your funding sources as a police department, obviously with a focus towards sort of the resources that come from the state level. I would just like to kind of understand what that funds and then what percentage of your sort of overall funding that is.
Yes, sir. Do you mind clarifying a little bit more?
I'm just looking, writ large at your funding for the whole police department. Kind of what percentage of that comes from the state, what percent comes from the county or the city, and I don't know, and I don't need exact numbers. I'm not going to hold you to these exact numbers. I just kind of want to get, maybe 1/3, 2/3, that sort of thing.
Sure. Yes, sir. And I do not have those numbers. I don't know, Mr. Manager, if you could take that.
Well, thank you for the question. First of all, I want to appreciate being here today because of what the General Assembly has been able to do, especially around public safety. And that's very important, the partnerships in your leadership, the LEO Act, the Pretrial Integrity Act, civil crash investigators, what's happening around the increased funding for the DA. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention the PAVE Act, which is so important to both what's happening locally with roads, but also with transit. When we start to think about the overall general fund budget for the city, about 61% is for public safety. So our general fund budget is driven by property tax and sales tax. We have some enterprise funds like the airport and water, wastewater, as well as CATS, but that's more or less fee driven. So when you talk about the general fund, public safety is what we do. 61% of all of the general fund goes to police and fire. I will tell you that over the last 4 years, our investments in police have increased. When we start to look at the top biggest 10 cities in North Carolina, the growth in funding since 2015 is the highest in Charlotte, about 40% when you look at it per capita, not just total spending. And I think what's also important with just the funding for police is that when we see a problem, we try to address it. And we're here today, and if there are some problems that come up, we'll try to address those also. So we had a problem with retaining police officers. And it really happened 30 years ago when there was a COPS grant. And throughout the country, a lot of cities were receiving this influx of police officers. So we get to 2022 and 2023, and that's when their 30-year clocks were there. And with the supplement, we lose them. So we knew that we were going to have a situation with trying to fill these positions. So that's why since 2019, we've increased starting pay for police officers by 34% and top pay by about 40%. But back to the original question, general fund, about 61% of our funding goes to police and fire.
Quick follow-up. Sorry, Mr.
You're recognized.
Thank you. And of that 61%, obviously that's going to the police and fire. That part that goes to the police, is there any extra funds that are coming from outside the city that are going to the police department to help execute programs or pay officers or whatever it's used for?
Sure, absolutely. About 40% of that 61% is strictly for police. But there, like asset forfeiture, there's a lot of other funding streams. But in terms of just the general fund, it's about 40% that goes strictly to police.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Representative Miller, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for being here today, Chief Patterson. What is the starting pay and what is the top pay for your officers?
Starting pay for our officers is $59,000, and I do have it.
59?
59, yes, sir. 59,502, and the top out, I think it's 60. I might have to refer to one of my other assistants here, but I believe we're about 62.
And how many officers do you have, ma'am?
We are allocated or budgeted 1,938 officers.
Do you have that many cars to give each one of them?
No, but if we get the officers, if we get the cars, we'll get the officers.
Yeah, I know. That is a huge perk, and it really helps having to take home cars for retention and recruitment. So I would encourage that. Thank you.
Yes, sir. And Representative, I do have that number. Our top pay with our SPO program, Senior Police Officer 4 program, that top pay is $96,703.
Thank you, ma'am.
Representative Cunningham, you were recognized for a second.
Thank you. And this is going to be a hard one. We saw all over the country as ICE and the Border Patrol came in. And before I had made my decision on my votes, I had talked to several police officers about it being safer for individuals, detainees, to be picked up from the jail instead of people coming out into the community for what we have seen. But since that has taken place, we've seen a total disrespect of the ICE officers, and they are federal agents. And I've also noticed that people were training people to blow whistles and walk behind these individuals to antagonize them. What would you say to me as a woman? Would you be out there blowing a whistle and walking behind federal agents? I want to know that.
So, Representative Cunningham, I believe that we respect law enforcement, those who are doing the work to keep our community safe. We have an obligation to make sure that we support that work. And me being a police officer, my family, I tell them all the time, you need to understand the work that we do is difficult and that we should respect law enforcement. I wouldn't condone, I don't think it's right to heckle, to interfere, or to intervene in the work the lawful work that police officers and law enforcement is doing.
Thank you. I'm going to make a final statement on that.
You're recognized.
I'm a nurse by profession, and I've never told people to put themselves in harm's way. And I would hope that every officer, law enforcement, would tell people, don't antagonize federal agents because we don't have authority over them. They're federal agents. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any further questions? Representative Rainio.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to ask the Chief a series of questions.
Sure, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Chief, Your Honor, I'm getting promotions today.
I'll call you anything you want.
I figured you called me a few things a minute ago, but that's okay.
No, I did not.
I heard her.
All were in respect of your leadership.
You are recognized.
Thank you, sir. So thank you so much, Chief Patterson, for being here. I, as my work in the community, be it an elected official or not, we've been all very honored for your service here in Raleigh and now in Charlotte.
Thank you.
You know, both areas are very difficult, right? And we're in a time where it was earlier said, law enforcement has been, we want to support you. We know majority of our budgets are dedicated to public safety. And so, you know, and I think we all are in agreement. You know, Representative Cunningham mentioned ACORN, and we have been in direct benefit of that. But these things cost money. And you already have a large vacancy rate. So my question is, what amount of funding would you need to get at least closer to the fulfilling a vacancy rate? And then in addition to that, when they get to a certain point that they can get that CIT training, how much would you need?
So, Madam Representative, I don't know that I can give you a number. What I can tell you is what I would like to see. If we are able to give a 10% increase in pay for our officers, I think that makes them more competitive. I think large police agencies deal with a situation where surrounding agencies, so smaller municipalities, are able to fund their police departments better in that sense. I experienced it in Raleigh. We've seen it here in Charlotte as well. And so when we increase the rate of pay, they increase their rate of pay. And so we're going back and forth. I think to partly eliminate that, if we had, say, a 10% increase in our pay and those take-home cars like I talked about, I think that really makes us more competitive with those around us. It becomes a point where other agencies probably cannot exceed that. So that would help us. I can't put a price tag on it. We haven't done the research completely to see, how much that number is going to be. But I just put it out as food for thought for this body to be thinking about when you do the budget, when you start making budget considerations. If we'll look particularly for our larger agencies, and certainly we want to help all police. We want 0 vacancies across the board because we want our communities safe. I understand that fully. But I think our larger agencies are the ones who are seeing the crunch, or we're seeing these larger vacancy rates. So whatever the General Assembly could do to provide some extra funding, I think would be wonderful. One other thing I would also say is we talked earlier about the juvenile detention facility. I think that we should have one in Mecklenburg County. We are the largest county in, well, maybe Wake County is a little bit larger than us, but we have a large population that could be served from that. I think that's something else too, working with the state. We're willing to do that, to open up that facility to help for our juveniles to get the care that they need and to be in a place where they have family and they have support networks.
Follow-up, Chair?
You're recognized.
Thank you, sir. I want to ask you about the presence of ICE. I think most people misconceive that most people want people safe. They want people to have due diligence when it comes to their justice, right? But what we were seeing here, and you can affirm this, especially in Charlotte, that the best probably approach would maybe be that like Border Patrol and ICE be in collaboration with all of you when it comes to being able to comply to the detaining inquiries, correct? Were you informed that people would be coming in ICE or CBP? And if not, it's been a continuum. Have there been efforts to work together to make sure that compliance is maximized in your responsibility as chief?
Yes, ma'am. So I was not in the seat when Operation Charlotte Web came to Charlotte. I know that Chief Jennings was in communication. I don't know whether he received any information beforehand. What I would tell you moving forward, what I would love to see is the cooperation and the relationship we have with our federal partners is extraordinary. We work very closely with the FBI, HSI, ATF, all the 3-letter agencies very well. And our primary goal among all these agencies is violent crime reduction. So if ICE and Border Patrol wants to work on violent crime reduction and taking in violent felons, we are willing to work with them on that. I think that we all want the same thing when it comes to that. So we would be willing to work with them if they wanted to come in and collaborate with us, give us a list of targets. We do that kind of work anyway with our federal partners, so expanding it to them would be nothing different.
Just a follow up.
You're recognized.
So is it not happening currently with these other 2 agencies?
Well, ICE does operations all the time in Charlotte. And if they are working with violent criminals, we're working with them. That's not an issue at all for us. But I think the clarification that needs to be made is that CMPD and local municipalities do not enforce immigration laws because those are mostly civil and administrative, and we enforce criminal law.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Chair.
Any further? Oh, Representative Hawkins, you did raise your hand. You're recognized.
Thank you. Representative Sabrania asked the question, one of my questions I was going to ask. So I'll ask, this one is directed to the city manager. And what kind of partnerships, because it takes, I think you mentioned, it takes community partnerships to get this done. Nobody does this in a vacuum. And so all of you can answer it if you like. But in the private sector, what sort of partnerships have been pulled together to make sure that we're keeping the community safe? Because, we know that Uptown Charlotte is a business hub, a place that people, where there's a lot of foot traffic for people who are coming in and out of the city. And so it would be good for, I think, this committee to hear not only how you're working within sort of your own agencies, both in law enforcement, but also with the private sector, and then for you, Chief, with CMS, the school system on juveniles, like how you're all working together to make sure that you're preventing crime, but then also addressing crime.
So thank you for the question. I'll start off by also recognizing that we have a number of members from the Mecklenburg delegation here today, as well as members from City Council, as well as members from the business community. And it's spot on with what you just said. I can go back to last July, where we had an issue with the crime in Uptown. So being able to sit with the table, around the table with their business partners, and it's not just our business partners, but the DA was at the table, the county was at the table, we had some of our not-for-profits at the table, and we wanted a rapid response. Because what was happening, even if the data may suggest something different, if you don't feel safe, you're not safe. So being able to have that type of collaboration around the table really ended up in having some additional initiatives that we had from CMPD, but not just CMPD, and I think it's important. I'll take a big step back. In 2020, the mayor and the council pulled together the community to talk about just violence in general. And so it wasn't just paying cops, which is extremely important, and police officers, which is extremely important, but we strengthened our ordinances to deter crime. We made investments in the unhoused. We made investments in youth. We made investments in violence intervention and violence interruption, which the state has also partnered with us in that. We've made investments in infrastructure, things like lighting. It's just so important when it comes to safety. But maybe most importantly, we looked at emerging collaborative efforts. When I mentioned earlier the civil crash investigators, that's something that the General Assembly approved. We appreciate that. What that allowed us to do is 38% of the crashes were actually investigated by civilians, and that's freeing up time for police officers to be back on the street with crime fighting. So that's kind of as Chief Patterson talked about crime being down, and sometimes folks are scratching their heads with that. It's all of these initiatives and the partnerships, not with the General Assembly, but also with the private sector and the community, that I think is driving some of these results. That's extremely important.
Thank you.
Representative Quick. Representative Hawkins, are you? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Kate.
Yes, Representative Hawkins, you asked about our collaboration with Mecklenburg schools. We are very fortunate that the chief of that agency used to be a CMPD officer. He's retired and he's gone over there. So the relationship is strong. He communicates with us on a daily basis. We work very closely. If there are programmatic things that they're trying to do to help reduce juvenile crime, we're on board with it. We work very closely together.
Representative Quick, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and wanted to say before I got into my remarks and my question, I want to acknowledge the presence of those who represent Mecklenburg County here in the General Assembly, Representative Belt, Representative Logan, and the others who are here. I'm going to miss somebody. And there was someone who left.
You better get Becky.
That's right. Representative Carney, I'll do it this way. Representative Belt, Representative Carney, Representative Logan, Representative Lopez, and Representative Cotham, and also Representative Cunningham, who's on this committee. So I wanted to acknowledge their presence here this afternoon. We've talked about, and I want to address this to Madam Mayor, who thank you for your presence here this afternoon. I cannot imagine being the mayor of such a big, cosmopolitan, and growing city, where every pothole becomes your pothole and every homicide becomes something that keeps you up at night, I'm sure. We talked about public safety today, but I want for you to chime in, Madam Mayor, about roads and transportation in Charlotte. Traffic is an issue, as you know, but then also about the big events that come to Charlotte. Charlotte is an international city that hosts international events. The World Cup has a major preliminary game that's coming up in May of this year. You've hosted the NCAA Final Four. You've got NASCAR races right up the street that impact Charlotte and Mecklenburg. And then every time my New Orleans Saints come to town, I'm down in Charlotte cheering for them. So let me know, what
Is that an invite to us?
I need all the Saints fans I can get. What impact do these major events have on the city that are both short-term when they happen, but also long-term and the implications that you have to think about them in advance and after they occur?
I want to say thank you for even thinking about Charlotte and how we are growing and why we are believing so much in what we do in terms of building out a city that everybody wants to live in. And so what I would say to you is I could send you Dave Tepper, and perhaps that would be okay. And he helped us start out with all of this. I mean, it's just been I think what I would say to you is that we are trying very hard to have people come into the community in our city and to be adjustable to things that a lot of people, when we're talking about the responsibilities that we have, but we also want people to have the opportunity to thrive and have their kids and housing and all of that. So we're not perfect by any means. I really want you to know that. And I know that you have us, our other leaders here, then they can explain some of these things that we have. But I would say that the most important thing to do that we're doing is creating spaces. So for example, we worked with the Tepper Sports to have a new stadium. And everybody, it was very difficult. It was a very tough decision. But when we had the game coming in, and it was the last time, and the young man is like, he's all out there and everything, it was not a seat in the house. And it was really, really important. Right now, the Hornets are going on an 8 times 9. Oh, they're up to 9. Sorry, I was 9. But look.
You're about to get in trouble now.
I know. But when you think about this, pretty soon one of the things we're going to have, or at least not I'm going to have, but the Hornets are going to give the. What do you call the thing that you wear? No, I'm just joking. The jersey is going to be for Dale Curry. He's going to be given our leadership. We're going to give him the key to the city. And you start doing things like that, and then more people come, and they want to be uptown. And I think the biggest thing that we've done is really focused on safety uptown, to make people feel like they can be comfortable if they go for theater or if they're going for sports, if they're going for whatever reason. We are working really hard to make sure. And this is, I have to just say a couple of things. I did not know Estella very well, but she's now my best friend because she has the wherewithal to work through some of these tougher issues that we perhaps need to know about. And we're grateful for her presence, and I believe that we have the opportunity to have something that's going to be really strong for what we're going to be able to do and achieve in our city. We have 100 people a day coming into the city, 100 people a day. And we have to make sure every one of them comes feeling really like they can be safe. And that's what these two people do for us. And many people in our private sector just step right up to help us do this. And as long as we can carry out that kind of focus, I am sure that we can be proud or make North Carolina proud of who we are, even if it's just a small thing about Charlotte.
Follow up. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chief Patterson, I want to direct that question towards you because I could imagine also that these big events come to Charlotte, pull on your resources, and then how do you mitigate those for the people who live in Charlotte, having police resources, having to take care of World Cup, NCAA Final Four, hopefully one day soon a Super Bowl and those type things?
Yeah. Super Bowl would be nice. in Charlotte. Again, it's a collaboration. When we have big events that we have to staff, we look for off-duty officers to do it. We do not pull our officers that are on the street serving the community. We recognize the importance of having them in place, but we pull from other agencies as well when we can, mutual aid, to come in and help us with these events. I think that you have to be able to rely on your resources that you have. Highway Patrol has been good to us when we need them to come in and help us with initiatives and different things. They are available. I thank the governor for making resources available to us. When I got in the seat on December 1st, he told me, if you need state resources, they are available to Charlotte. So I am thankful to have that kind of relationship where we have local, state, and federal assistance kind of thing. But it is taxing to have all the events that we do have in Charlotte. We recognize that. Our officers are tired because they have to work a lot of that. But we try to minimize it by getting other resources to help come in and to fill those gaps where we can.
Final follow-up, Mr. Chair. Thank you. So I'll make it two parts, so it'll just be one question. Do other municipalities around Charlotte help with these events, Monroe and some of the other small areas that may or may not be in Mecklenburg County? And then secondly, what should the General Assembly be thinking about to support Charlotte-Mecklenburg? We have these international events that come in. We benefit from them. We come and we go to the games and those things. Well, what should we be thinking about, not only as an entity, as a General Assembly, to think about Charlotte and some of the other large counties when you have these large events coming in?
Thank you for the question, and I'll take the latter part first, and then Chief Patterson will take the first part. There would be no extension of the Panthers contract here in Charlotte without the General Assembly allowing us to extend that tax. So it is a collaboration and a partnership. I think the last data point I had is 22% of the economic activity that occurs in North Carolina occurs in Mecklenburg County. So we have to have these partnerships in order to thrive. Between November 24 and November 25, I believe there were 16 projects that were announced in Charlotte, Mecklenburg. And we would not have had those projects without state incentives and local incentives. What we learned is many of these companies, they love the incentives, they love the workforce quality, they love the airport and the quality of life. So as we grow, I believe the state grows too. And so there are these opportunities for us to continue to collaborate with economic development opportunities. And I think what's super, super important, as I turn it back over to Patterson, is that how can we make sure that we're able to do these events? And I'll never forget, we had, a few years ago, we had a MLS game, we had a concert, we had a NFL game, and I think we had maybe the biggest event in golf in the world happening in Charlotte over a weekend. And because of these partnerships and these collaborations, we were able to pull it off. But we can't do it without the partnerships and collaboration.
And to answer your question, the first part of that question, Mr. Representative, is that to be fully transparent, right now we don't rely on a lot of mutual aid. It's usually CMPD officers, Mecklenburg County sheriffs, other agencies that have jurisdiction within Mecklenburg County. However, moving forward, I would like to see our surrounding agencies engage in mutual aid. When we did Dreamville every year here in Raleigh, we had every agency represented helping out, and we were able to make sure that that event was totally safe where we never had any incidents. I would love to see us do the same thing in Mecklenburg County.
Representative Echeverria.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for a series of questions.
You're recognized for a series of questions that go no longer than 3 minutes.
Yes. Excellent. The first thing I want to say is I live right outside of Charlotte, and we're in a bedroom community. So my community works and plays in Charlotte, and I am cheering on you. I think everyone's cheering on Charlotte. I do have a question because, you know, when we talk about the DEI things, we often talk about opportunities for jobs and contracts. but I'm more focused on the community at large. And right now in Charlotte, in Mecklenburg County, basically, from your data, 60% of the victims of violent crimes are black. And that may have a lot of explanations. However, my question is this. There is a mayor's racial equity initiative that has $250 million, 150 of private, but there's 100 taxpayer dollars in there. So if we're talking about equity and minorities, when we listen to the chief of police say that we need raises in funding, you know, my neighbors don't have a funding tree in the backyard, and we say funding like it's this abstract thing. What we're really saying is how much more money we want from other people. Being that there's $100 million in the mayor's racial equity initiative that is not being used for public safety, how do we balance that out to say we want black people safe and well, Hispanics safe and well, white people safe and well, but we're spending $100 million here while asking why we don't have more money over there?
May I try first?
Please, no, I don't even have a follow-up. I just want to understand it.
So thank you for the question, and I believe there's three parts to the answer, and I'll try to go as fast as I can. I want to start off by saying that, well, thank you for what you said about Charlotte. Thank you. So Charlotte is a well-managed city by any measure. We're a AAA bond-rated city, which means whenever we go out to borrow money, we can get it at the lowest rate. And there's a bunch of criteria around that. We actually have the lowest property rate of any large city in North Carolina, with 27.41 per $100 of assessed value. In the last 7 years, we've only raised the property tax once. We did that in 2025, and the vast majority of that was for public safety. Over that same stretch, when we start to talk about the 13 largest cities in North Carolina, and I won't name them, but 3 cities have raised property taxes twice, 5 have raised them 3 times, 2 have raised them 4 times, 1 has raised them 5 times, and 1 raised them 6 times in that 7-year stretch. So we have this low property tax rate. We have the majority of our money going to public safety, and I think that's just a base level. When we talk about the mayor's racial equity initiative, where the city comes in is actually the corridors of opportunity. And that $100 million is not $100 million that's in a bank account somewhere. It is money set aside, and most of it's for infrastructure. And as you think about an infrastructure project, and I know there was some article about money not being spent, but it is allotted for that purpose, whether it's sidewalks, lighting, safety. So the city's, I guess, part of the mayor's racial equity initiative was simply the corridors opportunity, which are 6 areas in our city that have historically been underfunded. And so we believe that $100 million is a good investment. Most of it's in infrastructure, and the great news about it is for every dollar that's related to that investment in the corridors opportunity, we were able to get $1.71 in other investments.
So my question is this for the
Follow-up.
Thank you. We know that when a community becomes, the less safe it is, the poorer it becomes. And so when I hear, whether it's Charlotte or anywhere, I'm not picking, I'm just asking. When I hear monies spent in communities that are underfunded and poor, we're really saying in unsafe communities. So my question is there a way, because we're asking for funding, we're asking for money from other people, is there a way to redirect some of what we're doing or what you're doing to public safety, because she has an imminent need? I mean, it's not a great thing. I mean, 10% is going to get them an average of about $340 extra a month before insurance and before retirement. So is there a way to say to the community, we are focused on your safety because we are focused on your prosperity. I mean, an extra road is not going to make us safer, and when the business gets there and it's unsafe, the business is leaving.
So I totally agree, and that's why I started off with where we are with this very low property tax rate. The last time the last time the council raised the property tax again, first time in the 7-year period was 2025, and it was for public safety. So it seems very clear that our community is willing to make investments in public safety. If we had to stretch ourselves a bit and go back and ask the residents about priorities, public safety is there.
Thank you very much. I love Charlotte. I'm looking forward to you all doing well so that the surrounding counties will also do well. And I yield. Thank you.
I'm going to recognize Representative Cunningham, but members, just so you know, at a quarter till, I am going to gavel out if you are talking or not. We will be leaving here, respecting of their time, so they can get back to Charlotte. Representative Cunningham.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chief Patterson. Oh, I got an echo. So I'm going to talk about a particular place in Charlotte, and that's I-85 at Sugar Creek Corridor, because I live right off of that area. What are the triggers?
I did not cut you off. No.
What are the triggers that make federal come in off of the interstate? I know it's several of them.
Yes, and
Is it human trafficking?
well, so I-85 and Sugar Creek, it's an interesting area. For years, we have had incidents of, yes, human traffic, like you're saying, prostitution, drug sales, that kind of thing. We work with our federal partners. If we see there's a nexus where there is drug trafficking or offenses where we can bring in our federal partners to help us to clean that up and work with it, we do that. I know that there's been a lot of city funds that have been dedicated to try to, quote unquote, clean up that area. It is a challenged area for us in our community, and I know that we are trying to do a little bit more. I don't have all that in front of me today, but that's certainly something that we can research and get more information to you.
Okay, but the second question was this. The cameras up there, is it 200, 300, 400 cameras up there? Do you know?
I do not have that number. I'm
Okay.
so sorry.
I know it's some cameras up there. We just don't have enough officers that can capture everything. This question is going to be to Mayor Lyles. Madam Mayor,
Yes.
so the impact of the hotels, some of the negative hotels in that area right off of Sugar Creek, I see some changes happening, but I'm not sure if they're moving fast enough up there in that area. We're currently housing homeless children in some of the hotels in that very area, which I would say would be one of the worst areas for those children to be housed in, is a hotel up there right off of I-85 where all this activity is going on. Have we looked at some other options for the displaced homeless children and families? You know, they have children, but they don't have anywhere to live.
Yes, I really appreciate you bringing that to everyone's attention, because we have been working very hard, working with the county, and as we talk about how we do things together and work together, we know that we have homelessness, and we know that these kids are not being able to, go to school steadily and to be in a safe environment. And so I think that what we've been working with the county to build a system out so that we can have this done. And I believe what we want to do is make sure that we have bedrooms for both all of the families and as well. But as Stella has said, or the chief has said, that has been an area that it's kind of like dark. You just can't get enough light in there to get people to say, I'm going to be in this community, I'm open to it. So we're working with the county and providing more of that information and trying to get a program going on for housing our homeless people.
Thank you. But will you send me what you all are doing so I can kind of look at it? Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, ma'am. As you may notice, House members have ADD, We try to stay on one, but we're so excited to talk to all of y'all. So, but quickly, Chief Patterson, to kind of wrap it up with you, I thought you might want to take an opportunity to talk about Operation Safe Season before we part today.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, thank you so much for that. I told you when I got in the seat on December 1st, by that weekend, we were already kicking off an initiative because I wanted to make sure that our residents and our citizens see that we care about public safety, that I care about reducing violent crime. So we kicked off Operation Safe Season 2 weekends in a row, December 5th and also December 12th. And in that short period of time, again, we brought all these partners together. We made 437 traffic stops. The troopers made the most of those, I'll just say that. 438 citations, 54 arrests, 34 illegally possessed firearms taken off our streets in Uptown Charlotte, which is wonderful for us. And from some of those arrests, we had federal indictments. Our U.S. attorney took some of those cases. And I said, we just can't focus on the Uptown. Every resident in Charlotte needs to feel safe. So I told my team, I said, let's expand that. And so we did with Queen City Safe, which we kicked off last weekend, 2 weekends ago, rather. And in that operation, we were looking in North Charlotte around that I-85 corridor, and we made 133 traffic stops, 51 citations, 17 arrests, 14 illegal firearms seized, 2 vehicles seized, and over $1,400 in narcotics was taken off our streets. These are the kind of initiatives that I'm about and that we're going to continue to do throughout our city. Many people say we got to focus on the Uptown because that's the epicenter, and I agree, but every single resident in our community needs to feel safe, and I'm going to make sure that they feel safe.
So we assume that you're going to have some more of these initiatives.
Yes, sir. That's the plan.
Well, on behalf of this General Assembly, we want to thank you for being here today. And I want you to know something. You have a very robust delegation in your county. One of our most senior members, who has always been a lifeline for me when I got something to ask, a former trooper, healthcare worker. So you've got a robust delegation. As Majority Leader, all the citizens are my district now. So you've got a friend in my office. Anything that you need, please reach out to us. Let us help you. Mayor.
Thank you.
It is
Mr.
always
Chair.
good to see you. You light up a room that you always walk in. It's been a while, but thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
We're going to wrap up very quickly. We just want to run over a few things, let folks have a couple questions. You guys are going to have an awesome opportunity here with the military games coming very soon. So I just want to ask, being you have some of the globe's strongest people in the world coming, what is the plans to welcome them and protect them when they're getting here? And it's always good to have a Jones in the house, so Mayor or Mr. Jones, either one.
The military part.
Turn your mic on, please. Thank you, Mayor.
I'm just so thrilled about the military games coming, and this has been something that the Belk family has wanted to do for so long, and now it's coming in. I'm more worried about how we're going to get enough people to speak enough English or whatever the other languages are going to be.
They tell me these new ear pods do it like that, so I'm going to have to get me a pair of those.
I think you better go ahead because there'll probably be a run on the store for them.
Yep.
But I think, Marcus, you wanted to explain some of the things that we're working through?
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Mr. Chair, for the question. We're super excited about it. It's first time in the United States.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So we are, what's I guess the leading edge or the bleeding edge? I don't know how to say it, but we are excited. We're working with our partners to put on something that's really, really exciting that everybody can be proud of.
We're looking forward to it. We're expecting you to shine brightly for us. Now, Mr. Jones, while I've got you, there's just a couple of questions. Everything's been easy so far, and I mean, these are just not pointing fingers, not making accusations. We want to help figure out how to help you. Sometime back in 25, the City Council approved $3.4 million for a marketing campaign for cats. Is that correct?
That's correct.
I'm asking from this side, do you think that's the most efficient use of the $3.4 million rather than more guns, more cops, more authority help there?
So thank you, Mr. Chair. What I will say is CATS has an extensive budget, and there has been a great deal of increased investment in safety. This was is a marketing media strategy that has always been a part of CATS operations. The timing of it seems like it's in place of spending for safety, but spending for safety has actually increased over past several years with cats.
Here's where I'm at. I want Charlotte making national news for the World Games, the military games, not for what it's made national news for.
There.
I want that city to be the shining gem of North Carolina that I know it can be. I mean, it's a beautiful city, leading edge on a lot of things. Some things we don't want to lead on. We're here to help you. We need to make sure that the funding's going in the correct way. Like you said, it might have been just coincidence that it hit at the same time, but it looked kind of bad. You will admit to that.
Absolutely.
But we don't want you making national news for the wrong reasons. You got a chief that looks like she's on the ground burning it down to do the right things, getting everybody in place. You got a mayor that's certainly dedicated. Sounds like to me you are as well. But we want to make sure that you're spending properly. And that invitation is open to you as well, that we did the chief, to the mayor, to work with us to work with you. Again, you've got a robust delegation. I'm sure they'll come to your office if you ask and work with you, and I will as well.
Thank you.
Is there any further questions for the mayor or for Mr. Jones? Of course, has to be one. Representative Ager.
It's not quarter till yet, so.
I was trying to beat my time.
Thank you, Mr.
Quiz
Chair.
got a date or something. I don't know.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just have a quick statement and a really no question, if that's all right. We began this proceeding talking about incompetence, and I'll just tell you, I really didn't see it today. I mean, I really appreciate you all being here, both from the county and from the city. I just didn't see any evidence that the leadership and public safety officials in Mecklenburg County are incompetent. So thank you for that. In fact, in Charlotte, violent crime, we're seeing it's down significantly. I think we heard 29% down year over year here recently. Homicides are falling. Juvenile crime is trending down. And this reflects real progress driven by local officials like you all and law enforcement working tirelessly for the community. So thank you for that. The reality is that crime, does persist, and we've seen it. We see it with the Irina Zarutska case. I mean, I spent a lot of my military career in Ukraine, and so that one hit especially hard because I know lots of folks that have come over during that war period. It's not true just in Charlotte. It's true everywhere. I mean, I think if you look statistically, you're more likely to be a victim of violent crime if you live in Shelby or Salisbury or Robeson County or Vance County or Anson County. I think that's all true. But we see more horrendous crimes in this state than we really should. And that's something that I think as a legislature we ought to be paying attention to. And that's what this is about. So, but we started talking about incompetence, and I do think there are some things we can do here in the legislature that we haven't done. And it starts with passing a budget that will sufficiently fund our public defender offices, a budget that will hire enough ADAs in Mecklenburg County, but really across the state. A budget that will focus sufficient resources on needed mental health services, and a budget that will sufficiently resource our jails and pay our correction officers enough to hire and retain staff. And then, also deal with vacancies in our state law enforcement agencies, which, every state law enforcement agency that I talk to always talks about their vacancies. And so when we talk about, taking care of public safety, that seems like that's something that we really ought to focus on. And, I believe in accountability. I grew up in the military world. I believe that we should really look at ourselves in the mirror and lead by example by passing a budget that sufficiently resources public safety across the state. So thank you all very much for coming.
Well, with that, I would like to close with thank you for being here today. I disagree with my colleague. I think the city is doing a good job, and it's going to get better. I think in your county you've got some issues, got some serious issues. As far as the budget, the House has that robust budget, and we just hope our Senate colleagues will come around and help us pass that budget. And I think you would be pleasantly surprised how good our budget looks. I wish you safe travels back. Thank you for being with us today, and with that, committee is adjourned.